Now, former CIA analyst and Blaze national security editor Buck Sexton is here to discuss this story with me. Buck, from what I understand, you actually never want to pick a fight with your intel because they have the power to leak things and do all kinds of bad stuff. You never want to get into a cat fight with the intelligence community. What do you make of the president saying that his intelligence agents, they just underestimated the threat of ISIS?
Dana, you're absolutely right. And what's interesting is that this administration in particular hasn't been subject to the kind of leaks that President Bush's administration, of course, was, nor does he have to deal with the press, of course, pointing out those leaks in order to essentially defame his foreign policy. With this president, they've always rallied to his side. And on this issue of whether the intelligence community was, in fact, not doing their duty by letting this president know what was going on, it's just flatly false. In fact, you can look to publicly known statements of the intelligence community, including from a former outgoing director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Flynn, that this was a big threat. And in fact, they were probably going to be setting up a caliphate in the relatively near future. So it was very clear. And what President Obama's done here is essentially thrown the intelligence community under the bus because it makes it look like somebody else is to blame. This is, of course, not a new thing for this administration. It's just perhaps a little new on the foreign policy front.
Right. Well, and wouldn't James Clapper, I mean, if James Clapper was really genuinely implicated in this, why does he still have a job?
Well, Clapper has been a pretty good and stalwart partisan for the administration, in the sense that he's been willing to toe the line. And I think that here, at least, you could say that Clapper's not really somebody that should get a lot of criticism. He did, in fact, tell this president, from what we know, that ISIS was a real threat. Now, he's also the same director of national intelligence who at one point said that the Muslim Brotherhood is essentially a secular organization, if memory serves. So he's got some problems, and this administration has had their problems in the past, but that's continued on with the Islamic State is neither Islamic nor a state, as we know. So the intel community, Dana, absolutely warned this president about it. And from what I know from friends of mine who are still inside, there's a general sense that they're kind of sick and tired of this president pretending for the rest of the world that he somehow knows more about intelligence than his intelligence advisors and doesn't have to pay very close attention to them. I'm actually surprised no one's had that he, I mean, you know, I hate to bring that up, that euphemism, considering what's been happening, but, you know, that no one has, I was going to say no one's head has rolled, but that no one's been fired over this as a result. I just think you would think that this administration would sort of follow up on that for the optics, but they haven't. I mean, well, they didn't let Susan Rice go. They haven't let Eric Holder go. He willingly resigned to save them. So, yeah, I think they just this president's admission is pretty much all it is, and go on with business as usual. This president has done one thing. He's done a few things well, and what's I think close to the top of the list, Dana, would be surrounding himself with party hacks, essentially, partisans who put loyalty to the administration above the completion of their duties. When you're talking about national security positions, you would think that that's the one place where partisan politics could be put aside. But President Obama has consistently chosen people who know that as long as they protect the administration politically, they won't get fired, Dana. There won't be any accountability for the mistakes we saw at Benghazi, for example, back in 2012, or since then with the Islamic State. Although, to be fair, with the Islamic State, this is on President Obama. This is because he thought that the Iraq War was over. He ended it. Case closed. As we see, that's not the case at all.